So welcome to this last EU-level online dialogue of the SOAR project regarding the security by design. So this is the last of our series of webinars, but we still have some real events to go. But I'm very happy that you all join us today. Just some house rules. So please ensure that your microphone is muted, and please also ensure your camera is off unless you're speaking. So every time somebody speaks, then you can switch on your camera. Use the chat box for questions, please. So you can feel free to ask questions to the speakers or to anyone during the whole webinar, and we will try to answer them. This will be recorded. So it's also regarding if you don't like to see your face on the recording, then please keep your camera switched off the whole time. And we will use Slido for interactive polls. So if you don't know Slido yet, I will at the end of my little welcome do like a starter test with it. A few words about us. So we are the Architects Council of Europe. We are the European umbrella organization representing the interests of all European architects towards the EU institutions. So the way it works is that an architect is registered at their national chamber of architecture, and these chambers are then our member organizations. So it's around about 600,000 architects in Europe practicing at the moment, and we're trying to represent all of them. Our objectives are to be this single voice of architects towards the EU institutions. We are working a lot on educational and professional standards. So how do you qualify to become an architect? Then we work a lot on professional mobility. So imagine you qualified in Poland as an architect, but you want to work in France, and then you get a project in Luxembourg. So how would that work also from an insurance point of view? And we promote the architectural quality and the sustainability of the built environment. So we do this through a lot of policy work. So that means that the European institutions come up with regulations, and so they have consultations on these that we answer. We have policy position papers that we send to the members of the European Parliament. We invite representatives from the Commission or the Parliament to our events to speak, and so on. But we also do that through European research projects. So such as this, the SOAR project, and it's really a different way of cooperating with the European Commission, because it's a peer level way. So it's like at least once a month we sit together with project officers from the European Commission and see how the projects that we work on can be implemented in future EU regulations. So for example, what will be the definition of plus energy buildings in the future? How can we develop further skills for sustainable renovation and so on? So it's a direct input of what the projects that are funded by the European Commission then implement in the future. In this project, as I said before, is looking at security by design of places of worship. So it's about this difficult question on how to use architectural design to protect worshippers, but don't make them feel like they're in a fortress, to make a place of worship safe, but still aesthetic and sustainable at the same time. And how does the urban fabric around it also respond to this? So we are in this project for these reasons, and that's why we're here today, speaking about the call for best practice architectural examples. So basically, we had a call for architectural best practice examples at the beginning of this year, and with a deadline in April, where we wanted to see what is the applied standards of security by design. So what are the architects in Europe actually building and constructing for security by design of places of worship? So we were really happy to receive the entries, and we selected 9 that will be published in a booklet and in an exhibition. And today we're really happy to have 3 of these projects presenting their projects. So 3 architects that join us today. This is the booklet that's hopefully going to be printed in 2 weeks. So we're trying to have it ready for the 8th General Assembly, actually, working really hard, Gloria and me. So this is how it's going to look like with the 9 different projects in Europe. Yeah, so as I said earlier, this is our last online event. We're going to have 3 real events, and then I think we have covered in this project the security by design issues from an architect's point of view quite enough. The project ends at the end of March, and until then we will have one more event in Brussels at the end of November, in which looking at the digitalization and cybersecurity of places of worship. One event in Copenhagen on the 8th of December, which is about how to fund security renovations of places of worship. And then we're going to have a final event in Brussels on the 19th of January, where we want to see all the results of the SOAR project and also the exhibition. So all architects will be invited to this one. Yeah, so about the 29th of November, so you're all welcome to join, of course. It's going to be in Brussels. And this one will be about when we look at the digitalization of building data, how can we actually protect this data? Because if you use a CAD program or building information modeling or a collaborative platform for the renovation of a place of worship, you have the information on the windows or the security systems or the escape route in this building data that is online. So you need to protect this, obviously. And the other part of this event will be about the Digital Services Act by the European Commission and how it protects worshippers against hate speech on social media channels, for example. And then on the 8th of December in Copenhagen, we're going to have an event on how to raise funds for security renovations of places of worship. So we're going to look a little bit of like different ways from crowdfunding to national funding schemes and what is possible for faith leaders to make a security renovation of their place. And then, as I said, the 19th of January is the final event. So after all this advertising, coming back to today, this is me with a welcome message. Afterwards, Kaashif Awan, the project coordinator, will present the achievements of the project so far, the different pilot countries and timelines and what resources are available for you. Then Dr. Selma Harrington, who was the chair of the jury for this best practice call, present the best practice call. And then Paul Smith, also from Enhancing Faith Institutions, will present the call on security by design, really from a security expert point of view. And then we will have the 3 presentations of the architects. So the, sorry already if I make any name pronunciations not right. The Alcalá church is presented by Alejandro Beautell. Then the Monastery of the Capuchins by Sofia Aleixo. And then the new parish complex, the resurrection of our Lord by Massimo Lepore. And then we're going to have an interactive session with using the sli.do and then some final remarks. And then hopefully at 5 o'clock, we will finish on time. I'm already late, so a reminder to everyone to not overrun like me, but to really keep the time, please. So just a quick test run with the sli.do for everyone. So you can go on sli.do or sli.do.com works also, and then you can insert hashtag SBD for security by design, or you can here scan the QR code at the top left corner. And then just, so you can do this with your phone maybe, and then just write where are you based, so we see if everybody knows how it works. Gloria, can you tell me how many we are in the call? Because I cannot see the
19.
19. Okay, thank you. So 6, 8. We have a lot of people from Dublin, Spain, Italy, Lithuania, Lisbon, Tenerife, UK, Portugal in general, and Budapest. Gloria and Mia are from Brussels, but I'm not going to answer. Ah, yeah, thank you.
I type it for the both of us.
Thank you. Okay, so 10 people replied. I move on to the next question and see if more people reply. What is your professional profile? This is also important for us to know afterwards when we digest the event and think about who was there, who joined us, who was the audience. Okay, we have a lot of architects, director, researcher, security consultant. Do we have any faith leaders with us today? Yay, one, thank you. Okay, so let's leave it like this, and you can just keep it open on your phone for later on when we have the longer longer interactive poll. So I stop sharing and give the floor to Kaashif to present the SOAR project and where we are at the moment.
Thank you, Veronika. Gloria, are you able to share my presentation?
Yes.
Thank you. So as Veronika's kindly pointed out, this event has been a combination of a series of events that we've done, network dialogues focused on security by design for public spaces, specifically places of worship. So the key kind of takeaways, which I'll share in the presentation, are around the work that we've done to develop some type of guidance and standards for places of worship around security by design, which was very much a new concept that we have brought into the understanding and knowledge of the faith leadership and institutional managers of these places of worship in the 7 pilot countries we've been working in. So it's great to be at this stage now where we are at the last event, and as mentioned and shown by Veronika, actually the publication looks quite good, and look forward to seeing that, where we can bring the learnings from what we've learned, and obviously the projects that are on this call as well. So I'm just going to give a really quick overview, because I know some of you on this call may have kind of been through this presentation before. So these are just kind of the 7 pilot countries that we've been working in over the past year and a half. We're operational and have delivered training in each one of these countries so far on the project. Just 3 quick strategic ambitions of the SOAR project. One was around empowering communities to be and feel safe in places of worship, bringing communities together. This is very much an interfaith project. We've engaged people from different faith backgrounds and different sizes of places of worship as well. So we've had big institutions, medium institutions, and also small institutions, bringing them all together to ensure that they're all safe and secure and have the relevant training required. And a key part of this project is to help decision makers make the correct choices to improve safety. This is through obviously the policy area work that we're working with, and we have a whole activity plan on policy dialogues, in which we're taking what we've learned and the feedback from the communities on the ground to policymakers to try and keep institutions and communities safe across Europe. This is just a bit of a visual overview of the community-centric approach that we have followed throughout the delivery of this project, the SOAR project. As mentioned, we've been engaging with large, medium, and small-sized institutions, interfaith communities at different levels, and we've we've done this through the community development offices, which we have in place across the 7 pilot countries, who are facilitating and delivering training and engagement to communities across Europe. And so far, I think we've delivered training to over 800 faith communities across the 7 pilot countries as part of the work, and we hope to achieve over 1,000 by the end of the project on this. But the work of our community-centric approach has been engaging with faith leadership at regional and local levels, encouraging interfaith engagement, so bringing communities together through the SOAR project, because one of the key aspects of our work is to highlight that an attack, an incident against one place of worship or one faith community is an issue for all faith communities and institutions. So we want to bring these communities together, which we have been doing in our trainings. You'll see Muslims with Christians, with Jewish, with Hindus, with Buddhists, and having that moment to bring and share kind of experiences and insight within the communities together has been a real success of this project as well. And so this is just a quick overview of how we've gone about delivering the trainings that we have done at the level we have. These are just some of the key activities of the project. We've been delivering national engagements in key cities. So these national engagements have been taking place at the beginning and the end of the project to bring all the senior key leadership from the community perspective, from a policy perspective, law enforcement perspective to the cities. And then following these national engagements, we've been delivering more regional and local work on protective security training, which includes obviously our risk assessment work and our work on security by design. To also link with this, there's some women and youth training in which we are training and rolling out with bringing together women and youth from these communities to provide security training and support to them. And as mentioned, we also have policy roundtables and engagement lined up. The next policy roundtable is at the end of this month on the 28th, which will be for Belgium, and we've got one in each of the 7 pilot countries that we are working in. This just gives a bit of an overview, as you'd all be aware on this call, around the different elements of security by design and the bit more of a technical insight into how we've gone about things. So obviously, in regards to the concept of places of worship and SBD, there are different elements at play, from security advisors to engineers, technology experts, architects, which we have on the call, and urban planners. And those who are aware of security by design, which you all are on this call, there's a lot of technical aspects and work that goes into developing SBD within buildings and institutions. And these are the kind of the aspects and the information that we've been trying to develop as part of our knowledge base to places of worship who are not as well informed on this topic of work, an area of work that we've been delivering as part of SOAR. As mentioned at the beginning of the call, these EU level network dialogues that we've been developing is a series of engagements and events in which we've been touching on an aspect of security by design. And these are some of the scoping papers that we've developed following these network dialogue events. As you can see, we've delivered a scoping paper on visual deterrence, implementing security by design for existing buildings and heritage sites, gates, doors, and windows implementation, and outer area protection. And we've just most recently published our latest scoping paper on perimeter security, looking specifically at the environmental design and looking specifically at environmental design of the work. So these are all available on the resource section of the SOAR website, in which you can openly download these scoping papers, and we'll be developing some more scoping papers as we continue on this work of SBD. And we hope at the end of the project to actually bring these scoping papers into one larger document, which will provide an insight into the standards and guidance that we've been discussing as part of this project with architects, with faith communities, with law enforcement, as a legacy document on SBD. As part of the Resource and Knowledge Hub, we've also developed best practice and guidance for faith communities, which touches on different elements on security and security by design. These, as mentioned, have been developed for different faith communities and institutions. As you can see, the Incident Management Guide for synagogues, for mosques, for churches, which go into 20 different tips and steps about how institutions can keep themselves safe and secure, specifically during religious events and festivals. And these are very specific infographic tips which provide, again, an increased knowledge and understanding for the communities that we're working with on the aspects of security that they should take seriously and how that they can address some of these concerns and issues. And these are all available for free download on the website. We've been also developing the SOAR monthly newsletters since the inception of the project. I think we're on issue 16 now, and these are, again, on the resource section of the website, which provide, I think, a brilliant overview of the work that we've done at the scale that we've done it at, and the impact that we've had. So these are released at the end of every month onto the website. So those who are new to understanding the work of SOAR, I suggest, if I thank you, Laura, for putting the link in the chat, to have a look at some of these newsletters to see the development of the work that of our work over the past year and a half in Europe around developing increased understanding and knowledge to faith communities around protecting places of worship and keeping communities safe. A key aspect, as you'd all know, around security by design and around keeping institutions safe and secure is the risk assessments. And a key part of our training and delivery has been providing detailed risk assessments to places of worship in the countries that we've been working in. And these are just some of the images, as you can see, of the risk assessments being delivered, as mentioned, at different places of worship from an interfaith perspective with different communities, ensuring that there's a process of a two-step process of highlighting any potential risks through a detailed assessment of the building. And this is all documented down and then followed up with the institutions to ensure that they are implementing the changes requested. So at the end of the project, we hope to deliver 50 of these risk assessments to faith communities, which will be, again, a lasting kind of legacy of the work to improve the security and safety for different sized institutions across the pilot countries that we have been working in. A key aspect of this specific call is around inviting the three kind of best projects from the SOAR competition, projects that have implemented architectural security by design into buildings for places of worship. So we're very excited to see some of these projects. We came to the decision through the call for experts and best practice event in Brussels. I think this is in August this year, with the jury members who have done an amazing job on this project in guiding and providing advice and implementation on security by design for places of worship. I think every jury member has provided training as well at some stage to our work in terms of educating the faith communities and faith leaders about SBD and its importance and how institutions can implement it. So the jury event, as you can see here, we gathered around, we assessed the projects that had been submitted and came to the conclusion that the projects that are on this call were the most impressive. And so congratulations for that. But that's all down to the hard work of the jury members and the projects, the excellent projects that were submitted earlier this year. These are just some quick, I'm just conscious of time. These are some visuals from the trainings that we've delivered. So these are a mixture of national engagements, regional engagements, and local engagements. You'll be able to see communities from different backgrounds and institutions present, different faiths. And a key part of the training, as I mentioned, is also bringing together communities, law enforcement, policymakers to have dialogues at these events and trainings around the aspects of protective security. again, just some more images from the trainings that we've been delivering across Europe. So just to touch on, again, something that I mentioned earlier around best practice work on protected security. So these are some of the videos in which we brought to life the incident management guides that you saw in the earlier slides around specifically for institutions to specifically prepare for religious events. And these are 20 dedicated tips. These videos are available on the website and on our social media platforms as well. And these are, again, infographics that have been developed by the team to increase awareness, understanding, and guidance for institutions around how to keep themselves secure during religious events. This is a video, I'm just conscious of time, but as I said, this is, as you can see here, this is for the 20 security tips for synagogues, and we go into each specific tip in detail, providing highlighting the areas of risk and then how these can be addressed moving forward. So this is some of the work that we've done following the trainings and following our engagements and dialogues with communities, with architects, with law enforcement, to produce to ensure that faith communities have an increased understanding of some of the potential risks that do exist and how they can address it. I think we can go to the next slide. Some of the work that we've obviously the work that we've done across the pilot countries, we have put together in these kind of summary reports, which we have been sharing with policy level, just to highlight the impact that we've had across the scale of the project up until now. And these reports kind of just highlight the success of the project, the feelings, the responses, and the impact that we've had. One of the key questions that we ask as part of our training evaluation is around the increased knowledge and understanding of security by design for faith communities, what the understanding was before the project and after, and we can see from our evaluation work a substantial increase in knowledge and understanding of security by design, which, as you know, is quite a complex topic, which highlights the excellent work I think that's been done by the team to bring this concept to the forefront of the minds of faith leaders and communities across Europe. Again, just highlighting some work that we've done and the impact and success of the project, which we've seen. These are some of the reports, documents that have been produced by the United Nations this year across different aspects and fields. As you can see, there's 5 documents there: protecting vulnerable attacks from terrorist attacks, protecting urban centers from attacks, protecting tourist sites. And you see on the 4th document, protecting religious sites from terrorist attacks. Within this document, the UNAOC, the United Nations, included the work of the SOAR Project and the impact that we've had in providing training and support for public spaces, but specifically religious sites, in ensuring that they have the mechanisms and trainings and ability to keep themselves and the congregation safe from any potential attacks and harms. So this synergy that we've got with the UNAOC, United Nations, has been a real success point of the project. These are just some of the external engagements that the SOAR Project have engaged with, promoting the work. As you see from the G20 summit, we're in Munster in Germany at a religious conference, providing overview of the project, and the G20 Interfaith Forum as well. Most recently, we engaged quite heavily at the World Council of Churches Assembly in Germany, in which we were invited to speak about the SOAR Project. This is the largest gathering of Christians and churches in the world. So it was a great opportunity to again showcase the work that we've done specifically in Germany, as this event was taking place there, in protecting communities and institutions, and again just reinforced the impact that we've had on the ground to be invited to present the project at such events. Again, just some of the media results in which our work has been covered quite successfully, building relationships with different institutions and different faith communities across the pilot countries. We've got a very busy November and December and lined up. Again, the SOAR Project website has all the upcoming events that we have in store, as you can see. So if you are interested to attend any of the events in the specific countries we are working in, please do go to the website, do share the website events page to specific events, and you will be able to attend through there. So this again just highlights the level of activity I think that we're working at and the support that we're providing. So this is on the SOAR website, in which you can access and share to your networks. I know I've taken a bit more time than I should have on that, but hopefully that provides just an overview into the work that we've been doing at SOAR, which hopefully is a good kind of introduction into what's to follow for the rest of the event. So apologies for taking, I think, a bit too long, but hopefully that was helpful. And back to you, Veronika.
Thank you, Kaashif. Thank you very much. It's an incredible body of work and resources that is available through the SOAR project. I'm always very impressed. So I hand directly over to Dr. Selma Harrington, who was the chair of the jury of the best practice call, because we are already 15 minutes late. So I will just stop talking and give the floor to you, Selma.
Thank you very much, Veronika, and I'll just attempt to share my screen here. Just bear with me. Can you see this? Can you see my screen?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So greetings, everyone. Again, I'm delighted for the opportunity to review with you together the call for best practice examples. And of course, I'm looking forward to hear from our selected practitioners. And as was mentioned before through Veronika's and Kaashif's presentation, this snapshot of current practices through the lens, so to speak, of security by design will help us assess and evaluate the role and potential of the architect's expertise in dealing with specific negative impact of deliberate vandalism or destruction of property. But today I'm taking a bit of an opportunity to sort of reflect on a broader context of UN Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm sure you are all familiar with, but which kind of give us the background space within which I think our architectural practices shape their work in the environment. So I'll be reflecting specifically on the 4 of these goals, because I think they are the most relevant probably to this topic. So SDG 4, quality education. So it calls us for to ensure the inclusivity and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities. And therefore, the religious buildings, religious heritage provide for us an opportunity to learn. In other words, we need to see these buildings, these projects as educational resource. Now, this may be self-understood and self-evident, particularly in the case of well-known historic buildings and sites, which are also probably sub-object of tourist attraction, international tourism, and treasured by their communities. However, even in a moderate scale, in a more modest project, we as architects can and need to engage in a reflective practice, which this exercise of best practices, best example is. So we need to engage in the reflective practice. We need to record, document, and publicize the knowledge that we gain from the project. And that process is at hand now. So the other 2 goals are SDG 10 and SDG 5. So they both deal with equality or reducing inequality, and SDG 5 specifically is looking at gender. So what does that mean for us as architects? You possibly know that since 2015, with the large European Union's initiative of Year of Cultural Heritage, there is a spotlight, there is an opportunity to consider the contribution of heritage and religious heritage in the built environment. The last such initiative within Portugal presidency in 2021 explored this topic under the headline Culture and Cohesion. So what does that mean? Increased social cohesion is seen as actually increasing the sense of community, improving the well-being, achieving better health, better learning outcomes. We need to be aware of these trends. These are kind of broader concepts. Sometimes within practical work, we tend to forget about them. But it is important to build and avail of the recent international research databases, as was just shown within this project, and try to implement them and apply to our practices. And above all, I think it is important the community awareness and action within community is very important in its role to break out the barriers between different communities and break out sometimes the attitude us and them or us and other, which is a start of certain misunderstandings. So probably the most close to our interests and knowledge as architects is UN SDG 11, which talks about sustainable cities and communities. And the goal itself is calling us to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, and resilient in order to be sustainable. So therefore, we need to look at religious heritage, religious architecture, as a hub and an opportunity for creating community or to regenerating community and reaching out from that community in our towns, countrysides, and villages. Because this type of setting can provide us with sense of belonging, with kinship with others, cultural and spatial orientation, which we often use by pointing to church spires or mosque minarets to get somewhere. So in towns and cities, this plays an important role. So these are the specific goals, but what are the attributes then? Again, to put the goals in the context of other narratives that we are talking within sustainable architecture and sustainable heritage, we are talking about 4 components: environmental, social, economic, and cultural components. So there are these complex concepts which create a framework within which we can operate and analyze the impact of our work. In environment, we have to be aware that our work contributes to the resilience and prevention of natural hazards, that it also respects and protects by the very nature of how we design spaces as inclusive. It enables respect and communication and equality. It provides economic incentives, and in specific, and I put that in a cultural box or cultural circle, fostering peace and security. There are specifics which we can take on board to ensure that our designs and interventions in the built environment are contributing to prevention of conflict. They can sometimes be called our skills to intervene during conflict, or even in conflict resolution and post-conflict recovery, as is, for example, shown in this central picture. It's a bank in the city of Mostar in Bosnia that has been kind of on the borderline between 2 communities who are painfully trying to rebuild after 30 years after the war. They're trying to rebuild their communities by introducing the narrative jointly around destruction of heritage. So these are bigger concepts. They are enshrined in the UNESCO's charters of World Heritage. So again, the three principles: human rights, equality, sustainability. We can all apply them in our everyday work, no matter how small our projects are. But I think it is helpful to see our work within the broader sense of purpose of all human activity. So I will just touch on another concept that is the most recent among these sort of broader concepts, and that is the European Initiative and the New European Bauhaus, which is again calling on creative professions to contribute to the discovering of the spirit of place by joint actions, by participation, by inclusiveness, by creating beautiful, aesthetically pleasing and safe places through dialogue, through cross-disciplinary collaboration, in order to create a sustainable and long-lasting safe environment for all of us. So there are a lot of opportunities for us as architects to get engaged and also to promote our work in the spirit of this holistic approach that all of these regulatory or ideological concepts that are coming from our large institutions that are calling for. So moving on to the actual theme of our call for best practices, it struck me as important to say that it highlights really the significance of architectural design brief. In other words, it is presenting the professionals with a need to engage and sometimes lead a very thorough process of understanding clients' needs and wishes in order to deliver a successful design. We probably all know that the demand or the brief for to design a religious space is a relatively rare opportunity. It is specialized and it is sometimes complex for most of architectural practices. In other words, architectural practices are usually not specialized to deal with it, but they deal with many other briefs or tasks, project programs. So this cyclical demand, periodical demand to design a religious space depends, of course, on many social, economic, cultural, and environmental factors, which is all actually mirroring the overall dynamics of our communities where we live and the society in general. But what is general in the brief for a religious space is also that we need to consider it as a part of public domain. So in other words, religious building is also a public space like the school, like a university, like library, etc. Although, of course, it is usually adapted and customized to serve a distinct community. The other special ingredient in that sort of special aspect of religious buildings is that it creates a sense of belonging to a specific community, but also it creates a sense of belonging or sense of identity of the environment within which this building is located or this site. So that is a very delicate component that calls for cultural sensitivity. But despite specificities or customization or specific features of each religious building, we also have to say, Kaashif has mentioned that every religious space, regardless of the form of faith and beliefs, it commands respect, it commands care and integrity of its sacredness for the communities where it is situated. So for architects who are dealing with designing such religious buildings, apart from traditional skills and competencies, what is called for also are so-called soft skills. And I have tried to pull out a graph that might be most appropriate. What are these soft skills? It's listening, communication, a positive attitude, and so on. So designing for a client, which is a religious who is often represented by a religious leader, is also designing for a user, it's designing for a corporate client. That's kind of often makes a difference in the architectural task. So cultural sensitivity, as I mentioned, research and knowledge, as well as dedication and skill to make adequate decision along the way, each step of the way throughout design process and its implementation on the site. Of course, architects bring their technical competencies, and among them is risk assessment for human health and safety, which has which features and is present prior to going on the building site, in the duration of it, and even afterwards. So this requires continuous education of architects, so-called continual professional development, CPD, which is something that we learn in professional practice, not as much during, but mostly after the study and along as we go with our practices. It also has to be said that this is a shared responsibility, and health and safety we share with other practitioners and professions that are involved in the design and the construction process. And again, one of Kaashif's slides has actually singled out who might these participants in the design process be. So for us architects, the practical implications of risk assessment call us to be really smart, specific. So we need to use the evidence and new knowledge, because sometimes there are new requirements, new risks. A careful study of precedents, in this case for vandalism and destruction, to measure, to sort of have a measured, adequate response and a provision for it. And as Veronika was showing in one of the early slides, it's a delicate balance between safety, but also accessibility and inclusivity of spaces that we wish to create. So there is a need for evaluation of the impact of our measures, and that has to be embedded in the risk assessment. So typically, for example, in Ireland, where architect's title is regulated, risk assessment procedures are sort of part of professional practice, where the architect assumes a role of so-called project supervisor at the design stage, which means that he or she needs to produce a detailed risk assessment and report, which is then monitored throughout the construction and amended accordingly. Very often, in standard projects, safety by design doesn't feature, security by design, or hasn't featured in the past. There are the roles to follow up as a so-called assigned certifier, so somebody who looks over what has been done at each phase of the project and verifies that it is according to the risk assessment. Main contractor has the role of a main supervisor during the construction stage, but I think we need as professionals to carefully now assess this, the new element of safety by security by design, and in what measure that needs and how to be included in our health and safety reports. What are the implications for professional indemnity insurance and so on. So smart approach is called for. Looking over the call for best practices and the selection that we have reviewed in August, one can really say that it is quite evident that most of architects work within this holistic approach concept to their designs. And that is quite natural. So I think this umbrella here on the left in my graph is sort of a nice illustration of that holistic thinking, where architect usually carries the vision, project vision in mind from the very inception, from the beginning of the project, sometimes it is he or she is the only person that can kind of hold that vision successfully towards the end, to the end. But the crucial role is to help coordinate that vision with client and user, design and construction teams, and local planning authority as well. But these complex technical or regulatory requirements, including specific measures of security by design, cannot and should not be considered as a linear box-ticking exercise, because this will not deliver holistic solutions. Each design project responds to a specific client's brief, requirements of the location as well, culture, etc. So in our view, as a jury, the selection of projects that we have received demonstrate the skill and dedication of our colleagues to their clients and their craft. And that hopefully will be further illustrated today in the conversation. I wish just to add also this slide showing the 8 principles of high quality Baukultur Davos principles, which the jury from the start of preparing to evaluate or assess the submitted projects adopted as a sort of guideline. We of course could not assess every component because that was not part of the brief, for example, economic values, etc. But these quality guidelines, as listed here, proved a very good and valuable way of looking at what is currently on the architect's desk and what has been built in this area. Entries present practices from several countries. The categories that were submitted vary from newly built churches, extensions, refurbishment, interior retrofits on existing sites, interventions in public open space, or some phased revitalization works on the derelict structures. 2 of the projects that were submitted were not directly providing a religious community service, but instead had a valuable public functions. For example, they kind of touched on the identity and memory of the place, or provided a historic continuity of communal use on that site. But again, majority of submitted projects demonstrated the engagement with the contemporary design language to articulate external and internal spaces in a contemporary way. Among the selected findings, I will only mention that the jury briefly discussed that there was a somewhat imbalance in representation, whereby most of submitted works were predominantly Christian and mainly Catholic communal spaces. And we were sort of recommending that the underrepresentation of Muslim or other religious communities could be possibly attributed to geographic scope of the project partnership, but also that maybe in the continuations of the project, in the continuation of the SOAR project, the lead partner might address this issue in an appropriate manner. It is a new, for architects, this is a new component to be considering when and as appropriate. And I think we need to carefully assess how will that be conveyed through training as necessary to architectural practices, and in which way should it be or should it not be reflected in the regulations. So on that note, I thank you very much, and over to you again. And I'll stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Selma. So I directly hand over to Paul, who is going to present his point of view from the expert as a security officer. And Paul also joined the jury meeting. So the floor is yours, Paul.
Thank you very much. Let's just share my screen. Here we go. How does that look? Is that good?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, lovely. I just want to take the next few minutes just to complete the picture that Selma has introduced us to around the jury event. And I've given this the title of the application of principles and good practice, because that's what it was all about really in terms of my attendance. So my little discussion will talk a little bit about my background, which is probably helpful because you'll know where I'm coming from in terms of this particular agenda of security by design. I'll touch upon the role that I had in the jury and also some of the main good principles and characteristics of the entries, which actually, it was a joy to see them. They were quite impressive. And some developed in some very challenging circumstances as well. So just to introduce myself, I've had about 30 years in policing, with a policing background to a senior level. And I was also a specialist in crime prevention and counter-terrorism. Of note for me, towards the end of my career, I also specialised in dealing with faith communities at a strategic level, and as both Kaashif and Selma have mentioned, specialised in the role of faith communities in a cultural and a social setting as well. I have a background in the UK in architectural liaison. So a lot of you will know that in the UK, there's been a very sophisticated method of delivering what they called secured by design since the early 80s. And of course, companies and manufacturers of building and security equipment can have their products accredited by this UK organisation, but also architects can have their developments, their plans, also accredited for a secured by design award. So it's quite comprehensive, quite sophisticated. And in terms of prevention, in terms of increasing the quality of the developments, we found this to be very, very useful indeed. And latterly, over the last 12 years, I've been delivering and helping to deliver government-funded work in counter-terrorism and prevention, both in the UK and across the EU. So as you'll have guessed, my role in the jury was merely restricted to acting as an advisor in relation to the general security attributes of entries, and also provide comment to the architects and the people that have important qualifications and experience around the table around the application of security, secured by design and security by design, the principles, and whether or not it met the spirit of the project. One particular area that interested me was it was quite clear in some cases how people had applied security by design in a conscious way, but also I noticed that some of the design aspects that were submitted almost provided some degree of security by design in an unconscious way. In other words, the architect hadn't made mention or reference to it at all, but there was some really good references to security by design. You could see how things were working, in other words. And all of this was within the understanding that any security measures had to be harmoniously integrated into the environment. We were looking for practicality, whether it was easily achievable, and whether it was proportionate to the problem that was trying to be resolved. And I always note when I look at plans or look at developments, whether the owner or the operator of the building, along with the architect, has thought about what they're protecting and why. And, you know, some very simple aspects around, do they understand where their security perimeter is, And how will all of these aspects work with other procedures that they have in place to make sure the building works for them in terms of how it should be used? Obviously, some of the developments that we looked at within the jury process, we noted, as Selma has already mentioned, that some of them could have multi-use. So they are in fact a community-based development, but could also have a social and a religious aspect to them as well. So the criteria that was applied was that we were looking for plans and images that show some understanding of SBD principles as it's set out by the EC documentation at the moment. We were looking for a conscious reference to the safety of building users and a good marriage of security, good design, use of landscape and natural features. And we were looking for some degree of evidence of a risk-based approach, accounting for the likely use of the building or multi-use of the building as well. So there are, for me, 4 SBD points that emerge from the jury process. As I say, some of the sites were extremely challenging, but firstly, one of the things that we noted was that a lot of the entries showed a good use of landscape and natural features. In other words, it used it showed good elements of using walls as a security feature, the way that entries and entrances were adapted to avoid attack by vehicles, and the way that the high points or high aspect of land was used to give good surveillance around the property. By the way, the images that I'm using, none of them are of the actual entries. These are some of the images I like to use in some of the training products that I deliver within my role. Secondly, the informal surveillance, in other words, the surveillance that normal visitors and staff and volunteers of the places of worship was enabled to alert people inside and outside the building. So a lot of the buildings enabled staff and volunteers to stand at the entrance, for instance, and have a really early warning if something was happening in the street or at a distance, to make sure that communication could be made inside the building in plenty of time. I was particularly impressed the way that some of the entrances, the doorways, had an aspect or a design that allowed an individual to have some time to alert people inside the building that all is not well. Thirdly, some good consideration was given to entry, exit and escape routes, taking account of its changing use, of course. And so we saw a lot of the designs that were submitted made particular reference not only to the formal entrances, but also to escape routes and the way that congregations could enter, but probably more importantly, exit in an emergency in a very efficient manner. And lastly, some of the design elements were included to deter or slow down a criminal attack or a personal attack. So there was excellent use of lighting and the way that the landscape blended into the building to ensure, especially the most devastating attack, which are from vehicles and an armed attacker, could be delayed because of the way that the front aspects were designed and the way that other aspects of the building were protected from those kinds of vehicular approach. So that was me, a very, very quick run through with the aspects and the criteria that was applied. I'm very conscious of the time, Veronika, and I hope I've snatched some of that back for you. So back over to you.
Thank you so much, Paul. Well, we are right now, oh my God, 17 minutes late.
I've done my best.
You did very well. We always can say we cut out the questions afterwards if there are no major
Okay, thank you.
email or something. So, but yeah, Yeah, so thank you very much for that. And so this was basically the first block of our event. And now we're handing over to the architects to really hear about the 3 of the 9 projects that we are about to publish. So I'm really happy that that all 3 of them could join us today. And the first one is Alejandro Beautell, who will present the Alcalá Church. Alejandro, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Can you see it properly?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, great. Good afternoon. I have to say that for me it's a great pleasure to participate in this project with all of you. Thank you very much for the invitation, to all the team of SOAR and the jury. Let's see if we can speak about Alcalá Church. First of all, as a short introduction, I would like to explain what we do and where we work. We are a little office of only 6 people, almost like a family. We are not a company. I like to say that we do like handcraft architecture, not only for the scale of our projects, but also for the way we work. We accept very few jobs, and we work with our hands, drawing and making models, as you will see. Our office is based in Tenerife, in the Canary Islands, Spain. As you can see, we are very, very close to the West African coast. The Canaries are Spanish islands, although geographically and geologically, they belong to the African continent. The islands have historically been a geostrategic place as a tricontinental platform between Europe, Africa, and America. And those are the 7 Canary Islands. We are so close to Africa that when the east wind blows, the sand from the Sahara Desert invades us, causing what we call kalima. It is a sandstorm, which covers everything with a dense yellowish dust. But in general, in the Canary Islands, we enjoy one of the best climates in the world. Because of that, in the Greek mythology, the Canary Islands symbolized the paradise, the garden in which the Hesperides, the daughters of Atlas, guarded the golden apples that provided immortality. The Romans called the Canaries the Lucky Islands. But as it happens in mythology, paradise can always be threatened. Tenerife is just a small island located in the African coast, very far away from the mainland Spain. In these recent years, we see immigration crisis that is making us increasingly concerned of the worsening conditions of living in some part of the African continent. The reason being the climate change, geopolitical circumstances, or any other. We cannot exclude that in the future, this growing migratory crisis would cause tensions. The church I am going to present today is located in a village called Alcalá, in the south part of Tenerife Island. Here you can see the coast and the entire urbanized area of Alcalá. The church is just here where I'm pointing. In this photograph, we can see the old church of Alcalá. It was demolished about 15 years ago with the idea of replacing it with a new one. The people of Alcalá were very sad to lose its old chapel that was built by the local fishermen directly on the lava surface, on the volcanic ground. This feeling of loss was my starting point to design a new church for this place. Today, Alcalá is not as beautiful as it was in the past. Here you can see the fence that enclosed the space where the old church was. The bishop wanted a large modern temple for the growing population of Alcalá neighborhood. And on the other hand, the neighbors wanted the little chapel back. With these contradictory ideas, I began to draw. In those first sketches, you can see the intention of dividing the volume of the temple in two. One volume of a smaller scale and another of a greater height. The volume on the left replicates the old demolished church. It has the same proportions and wall thickness. It is an attempt to recover its memory. On the contrary, the volume on the right, this one with another color, represents the new, the future. In these sections, you can see the attempt to introduce the light in the central point of the church between those two volumes, right? Exactly here. It is a single interior space that transforms in two different volumes from outside. One recovers the shape and the position of the old chapel in a kind of reinterpretation of the traditional architecture of the islands. And in the other one seeks a verticality, giving the interior space a greater representativeness, culminating in a skylight that illuminates the presbytery and connects both naves, the old and the new one. Here, croquis sketch from the outside. You can better appreciate the volumetric deconstruction I was speaking about. Looking at the past without melancholy in order to build the future. That was the idea, the starting point of the project. In this blueprint of the main space, sacred space of the church, you can see two naves. The old one, that is this one up here, and the new one, the modern one, that is this one. We entered to the church exactly between the two volumes, between two different times in history. We like to play with this, with memory and with time somehow. In the center, we have the altar, the table of the altar. For me, a temple should be a place where it is possible to meet the mystery. So you need to feel safe and protected in order to look inside yourself, in order to pray. And this concept of this introspection help us to achieve a secure design also in the church. It is a closed space. You don't want to listen to the noise of the world, right? You don't need it. And this plan serves me to explain several security features that we try to implement in this building, which mostly rely on very simple architectonic solutions, as you will see. As it is this monolithic structure with 60 centimeters thick walls made of reinforced concrete. You can see this black line, those walls. The lack of pillars or any other weak points of the structure, it is working all together. And this axis of the church, from a very small raised square, you have these stairs to get up here, and then you enter in this narrow entrance to the main space, accessible at 90-degree angle, right? No windows visible from the exterior. 2 evacuation doors in case of the main exit is blocked, as Paul was referring. Here, let me see if I can, here it is one, and this is the second one. And this interior patio, this little one, and the ventilation chimney that we did to allow the compression, well, to ventilate, to introduce the light. This is the main thing. And then also it allows to make the decompression in case of any interior explosion. This is the ground floor below the main space, where the technical and utility rooms are located. Here in this volume in the right side are located the interior stairs, elevator, the bathrooms, etc. So, as I mentioned it, the building has a monolithic structure with massive 60-centimeter thick walls. This 60 centimeters important measurement. It was called our traditional architecture, the thick of the walls made by stone and soil. There are these 3 entrances to the main space, the main one and these secondary ones. 2 of them are accessible to the public. And as I told you, this platform, this square, that it is high. Here we can see the relationship between the 2 volumes and how at their intersection, a letter M for Maria, for the Virgin Mary, is formed. The temple is dedicated to Mother Mary, Nuestra Señora de Candelaria. And the light enters through here. And the statue of the Mother Mary is located in this cave, in the same place it was in the past, in the center of the old nave. So the Mother Mary is where it was, or they remember it. As you can see in this section, the light chimney ventilates the church, moving there from this patio, protected and closed patio with walls here. The air is moving like this. We made the model to understand how the different volumes work together. We always do. You can see the enter between these volumes. This is the patio, the tree, the old nave, and the new and tall and high nave. And the light is coming through here. This is the entrance. It is an old model in different scale to understand the place and the relationship between the church and its context. That is also an important thing. We're talking about the scale and many other architectural things. The work process of the construction site is one of the most exciting moments for me, and I guess for my colleagues too, where we can investigate and try out our ideas. Here we were starting to hammer the concrete walls to obtain different textures, also colors. This broken concrete is also very good for acoustic reasons. This is the only window of the church, a very tiny one. The thickness of the walls gives a weight to the building. That weight represents the intention that architecture has to endure over time. We aspire in some way to be eternal, mostly designing a church, and also continuing with our research on the possibilities of concrete, that we work a lot with this material, and also working with the concept of memory and time. We protected the walls of the old nave, as you can see, with this white cover. It is made with lime wash, like they used to do in the past in our traditional architecture. So again, the past and the present and the future, right? Here you can see in detail the materiality of the walls and also how the volumes, different volumes do not touch each other. I especially like this photograph because it represents the balance between the three elements that could symbolize the principles of architecture defined by Vitruvio, the Roman architect, of course. Firmitas, utilitas, and venustas. This complexity, this balance, strength, utility, and beauty, as we all know. Architecture is a complex field where we have to deal and to equilibrate many concepts. Selma was mentioning them. I would say that security is connected with strength of the building and also utility. But the challenge is not to dismiss the beauty. And we have come to the final result, the old nave and the new one white as lime and the other one yellow as Tosca, that it is the typical stone from the south of the island of Tenerife. And in between the entrance to this other time, this other world, and to face the mystery, let's say. The access to the temple is located where the different volumes meet, and we wanted the people to experience this feeling of space compression before entering to the big open space of the interior of the church. We used to call it like the wow effect. We wanted people to enter and to say, wow, right? We try to do it with the compression. The white volume recovers the shape and position of the old chapel, as I said, in our interpretation for the traditional architecture of the islands. By rebuilding it in a simplified way, an attempt has been made to recover its memory and mitigate the feeling of loss caused by its demolition. The main entrance, secured by a massive door made of solid wood. Side elevation, this picture from the street. As you can see, there are no windows in the main space. A drone view of the church and its surrounding, Alcalá. In this picture, you can see a small patio here, right? Surrounded by thick, tall walls. This patio provides light and fresh air into the church without exposing the interior, right? We are very close to the sea. Two different volumes outside that become one single space inside. The old nave has a different scale. In there, the walls are new, but the air that it contains is the same and condensates all the moments lived by the neighbors of Alcalá. All these happy moments like weddings, baptism, or sad ones like funerals, right? The air is the same one. The building has changed. This is the altar. I go very fast because I'm finishing. We have a little delay. Concrete as well. The light entering by the chimney. The solid wood benches and the patio here in the right side of the image. I would like to think that aesthetic, functionality, and security can be combined without dismissing either of them. That in certain circumstances, even, they are the same thing. They play together. My goal as an architect is to bring together all of the above aspects. And to finish, I would like to ask you, to ask myself, is this a modern or an ancient church? I would not know how to answer this question. Maybe it is both ancient and modern at the same time. And to finish my presentation, let me read some beautiful words from the Mexican poet Octavio Paz that says, the search for modernity led us to discover our antiquity. Between tradition and modernity, there is a bridge. When they mutually isolated, tradition stagnates and modernity vaporizes. When in conjunction, modernity breathes life into tradition, while the latter replies with depth and gravity. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much. This is it's always so good to hear the presentation from an architect and to understand all the thoughts that you have behind it, and it's so incredibly complex. Thank you. So I hand over to Sofia, Aleixo. We have only 30 minutes left, and we have still 2 architects, and we had the interactive session planned. So Sofia, run a bit, please. The floor is yours. Thank you. We can see, but I cannot hear you. Are you talking?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm sorry, apologies for this. I'm here with Victor Mesh, so we're both authors of this project that we're going to present, and I'll try to rush because we have a 3 minutes video, which I think it synthesizes all the intervention. It would be a pity if we could share it here with you. So thank you for organizing the event, which enables people to see us wherever they are at this present moment. So we're here to talk about what we call the houses of gods in the land of men. We'll be talking about destruction, protection, and preservation. We have been working in convents in religious buildings for quite a long time, and we always face this dual perspective of preservation versus protection, of rehabilitation versus peace recovery, of material values and immaterial values. As you can see in this image, on one side you have the material values, on the other side you also have immaterial values, because you can see the hand of the man who carved this figure. So we'll be presenting a work we did in Alcalá, in Portugal, in Setúbal, where we had the opportunity to make an intervention. We were commissioned to intervene in 2 abandoned buildings, one from the 14th century, another one from the 17th century, very nearby. And you will see that we had 2 options of how to intervene in this heritage. Just to have a brief idea of some of the convents we have intervened in our office for a long time. Sorry?
Nada.
So here is Setúbal, very near Lisbon. That red dot identifies the place where the convents are. This is the bay of the city. The convents are up here, so with a very beautiful view of the sea, the Atlantic Sea. And here you have the Atlantic Ocean, and here you have the convent that we'll be talking about, and the other convent here. And let us start very briefly with the first one. We did the unselected convent, which is the convent of St. Paul, which is located here. Why do we want to bring this up in our intervention? Because what we did was we had this neglected building, this abandoned building, and we did what we could call, perhaps, I'm not sure if this is the right word, a traditional way of thinking this heritage. And now the building is fully recovered. And from this old church with all these problems, as you can see, we have now a place where you can have cultural activities and religious, of course, also activities. As you can see, the church was in this lousy condition, and the cloister also, it's now fully refurbished. And even we found this amazing painting in the ceiling of one of the rooms of the convent. But this was in the St. Paul convent, and here you have the convent of the Capuchins, which is the convent that we sent to this call. And from now on, I'll be just reading very briefly the text that better explains what we did. So in the place of Alfagara, a slope overlooking the city of Setúbal, Portugal, realized the 16th century monastery of Our Lady of Conceição of the Franciscan Capuchins monks, here simply named the Monastery of the Capuchins. These monks decided to fully devote themselves to a religious life, away from society, living either alone as eremites or later in an organized community. Restored at the end of the 17th century, the monastery was occupied by the French troops during the Iberian Peninsula War, early 19th century, when the monks abandoned the place, soon to be followed by the extinction of the religious orders in Portugal in 1834. After the abandonment of the architectural structures, their ruins suggest a temporal inversion in the sense that although they remain as strong expressions of identity, they are at a transitional situation in terms of use, even though the original function still subliminally remains along with its social cultural value. The situation found in 2010, when we arrived, of decay and vandalism, called for an urgent establishment of emergency procedures to stop the decay, to prevent collapse, and to minimize the further development of decline. Furthermore, the continuous use by anonymous visitors who valorize this enchantment environment was visible in the trash laying on the floor, in the loving dedications inscribed in walls, and in the stolen tiles. The security of this religious site needed therefore to be improved so that visitors could admire, feel, and breathe the values in place, in a full respect for the place, open to nature, weather, and wind, while at the same time making them more secure through minimal physical protection measures that would still allow people to walk about freely and safely. We believe that cultural heritage not only refers to material remnants, such as ruined churches and convents, but also to intangible elements, including sense of place, memories, faith, and character of place. We further believe that local communities, groups, and some specific individuals who use religious heritage places are important actors in the processes of safeguarding, maintenance, and transmission of cultural heritage from the past, including their secure and qualified use and/or adaptation for contemporary needs, purposes, and pleasures. Urgency. Preliminary work included a topographical and architectural survey, deforestation, provision of access, and an assessment of the structural conditions. Although it was necessary to attend immediately to the collapsing structures, there was still time to record the conservation condition of the built structures, the context of the cultural landscape, the atmosphere, the aura, the genius loci, and the feelings aroused by the experience of these empty spaces, full of light, shadows, and sound. For this, we used drawn writing. Victor always does this in the design process to better understand the observed situation in which time and place became one. Our proposal is therefore the consequence of interpreting time and space, despite human action in the previous cycles of recognition, installation, and desactivation of the landscaped unit, where this built complex is integrated, and valuing the fact that it still captures the attentions of many others who come and visit this place of peace. It is framed within a cultural approach to architectural heritage valorization to be implemented in time. To rescuing this building from the ruined condition, a planned strategy for 25 years was designed. We set up a think tank by grouping a body of experts to provide advice and ideas on specific ethical and heritage problems found in this place. This group, coordinated by the conservation architect, comprised the owner, a structural engineer, a stone expert, a landscape architect, an hydrology expert, an archaeologist, an art historian, and an expert on the history of monasticism. It was put together to coordinate the architectural project and to establish guidelines for the interventions. As an interdisciplinary team, it provided a solid basis for explaining to the owner and raising awareness about the heritage value of the place, as well as the relevance of making good decisions rather than rushed ones regarding the future of the place. Listening to place, and we'll be listening at the end of this presentation to this video, which I hope we have time to. In the monastery of the Capuchins, the ruins had spent many decades abandoned, so it was necessary to stop the decay gradually and calmly and to stabilize them as they were. However, this operation could restrain visitors to enjoy this public place for a long time, so it was taken as an opportunity to identify solutions for providing secure visiting paths, further ensuring this religious site would be protected and safeguarded from any more vandalism. The challenge of promoting security was taken, and design measures were embedded into an innovative architectural and artistic concept, linking an historic construction system, as you can see in the drawings, with a secure path, mitigating the impact of interventions on existing structures while providing spaces for cultural and social use. The intervention used security by design as a tool for gaining users' trust in intervening the least possible in the spiritual spaces, which attractiveness and openness were enhanced by the wooden structure and filtered light along a trail of orange gravel on the floor, enabling large public attendance with effective protection. Therefore, security by design was at the very beginning of the planning process and design of this intervention. In the design of future interventions, security aspects would also be considered, guiding principles to be duly incorporated. In few words, the main objective of our proposal was not to rebuild the monastery as it was. We aimed to reestablish a new cycle of life, introducing the idea of the foundational construction site in its interior. This reference introduces the idea that the monastery is frozen in its construction period and not in the process of ruin. The objective of this intervention is to sustain a process of social-cultural mediation of the continued presence of man in the construction of the landscape in order to continue to benefit from it without, however, needing to rebuild. Aiming for the visitors to reconfigure the absences and feel the space as sacred, the present atmosphere, which is perceived amongst nature, was provided to the intuition and interpretation of those who visit the space and make this a place of worship. Strategic measures were implemented on site in order to preserve the resilience and robustness of the existing building structures, to reduce vulnerability, secure visitors, and to enable sociocultural activities on site. So wooden structures and waterproofing materials were placed on rooftops, a secure circuit was outlined below the structures, and openings were closed by strategically placing perforated concrete blocks in windows, controlling the light, fitting gates and railings to doors, avoiding unwanted access to the site and preventing the recurring vandalism. A protective, temporary, and easily removable measures, when the future decides how to intervene in the whole, they can be easily taken out. The non-integral reconstruction approach applied surgical interventions that provided for a safe use of selected spaces while preserving the site's cultural identity. As a consequence of the complex and urgent attention required during the construction stage, the architect, engineer, and conservator acted on site by interpreting the elements in place and assisting with final details, choosing materials, and selecting colors. The strategies implemented result from a systematic practice of reflective thinking and a continuous architectural research and practice following on experience with previous architectural interventions in religious typologies, as previously mentioned, to find the most suitable solutions for the preservation of natural and cultural heritage. Completed in 2012, The rush to decide was then avoided, which could lead to costly decisions, which by now are evaluated into 2 million euros investment. The implementation of security by design principles in intervention in this public space, and in particular in the existing religious structures, enable the visit of these empty spaces full of history and memories in its original and current natural context for cultural and social use. With this stage of the work complete, under the oversight of a qualified architectural and engineering team, the place is now expected to be studied, explored, understood in order to establish an architectural conservation intervention in the future. The improvement of security of this religious site provides the required time to be safely used by communities. Several cultural activities have since taken place, from visiting guided tours to music events, to workshops, etc., bringing people to see, use, and enjoy this place. It is believed that this innovative path for valorization, local religious heritage, committed to its safeguard and via a 21st century reinterpretation of its reuse, will contribute for general public esteem and for providing the time needed to acquire new knowledge on how to best use this place. What is now urgent is that guidelines for the subsequent phases be established by the think tank within a considerable yet realistic timetable, and now taking a further step to engage society as a whole, citizens, communities, faith groups, and civil society. And I would like now, if possible, if you could share the video, please. I will stop sharing. There is a small video about the place that we would like you to listen, so you can have the opportunity to listen to the place. Thank you. I don't think the sound is coming. Are you sharing the sound?
Yes.
No, I cannot hear the sound.
We don't have sound.
No.
Sorry. Just because the sound makes a huge difference. But it's fine. We don't have time. Just enjoy the images. Thank you. Sound is off again. Well, I'll use these images just to read one last call. So the call by the lead partner Enhancing Faith Institutions with project partners Finn Church Ed and Architects Council of Europe highlighted the urgency to establish design guidelines for religious buildings in ruins caused not only by neglect or other, but in fact and particularly in war or post-war situations after the French occupation in the early 19th century La Ferrara Capuchin Monastery, as we have seen. In fact, and particularly in war and post-war situations, this sense of belonging and well-being provide the happiness, the security, and the comfort that may be found in religious places. Today, the deliberate destruction that can be seen all around the world in synchronous time demands an urgent action. Cultural heritage must be saved, religious heritage must be preserved, religious sites must provide secure places for peace of mind. The urgency, nevertheless, to return these places to communities does not comply with the financial effort required, and rush to do it might also lead to underthought decisions. Therefore, This terrible situation, painful as it is for millions of people, should be taken as an opportunity not to rebuild immediately the damaged buildings, but to preserve the religious atmosphere attractive by its security, where some spiritual support may be essential to mitigate the difficulties of daily life. Preserving the religious buildings' ruins using security by design, such as those we established and applied in the monastery of the Capuchins, may give hope to those who believe, may give time to architects and owners to think how best to rebuild, considering heritage values and the contemporary ways of practicing faith, and may give time to properly plan and manage intervention solutions. Meanwhile, communities of any faith or with no faith may go to these places to pray, to be with their God, or just to be at peace in a spiritual place and feel safe in a secure environment. By bringing a new perspective on architectural conservation of religious buildings in ruins, this project aims at enriching European heritage debates on the time to reflect, to rethink, and to contribute for the rise of faith places in ruins, to reborn for the contemporary way of celebrating faith and enjoying peace in an historic environment. Thank you very much for your attention.
Wow, thank you so much. And what the jury was saying about your project was that it's so important to use this for emergency and for war situations that we unfortunately have at the moment, to really give this time that you speak about, not to make urgent decisions, but to safeguard that in the moment, and then later when we have more time to think about it, to make a solution or not.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I hand over to the last architect, Massimo Lepore, to present his project, please.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so I'm jumping now to the presentation. 1 second, please. This is it. So I'll try to be as short as I can.
Thank you.
And this is the project for a new parish church in Viareggio. Viareggio, you might know, on the Tyrrhenian Sea, is one of the worldwide known highlights for Italian tourists. So it's a wonderful stage for the summer and also for the winter because of the famous carnival. But as any stage, it has a backstage, which is behind the railway tracks, and it's the industrial area of the city where you can see this circle. With the church we had to build was in this neighborhood named Varignano, which has always been quite difficult place in terms of social environment, as it has been affected, well, it was being involved for immigration since the very early of the 60s because of the economical boom. So a lot of workers coming, especially from the south of Italy, moved to the north of Italy to work in factories. And then in the late years of this century, because of communitarian and non-extra-communitarian immigration. So that neighborhood brings a lot of problems in terms of security, identity, and coexistence of different people. The place, of course, was marked by a very strange building, which was the parish church, built in the 70s. And since it's an industrial area, the architect built an industrial building and transformed it in a church. So it was quite a challenging project. And due to the use of those prefab materials, the problem of the existing church was its life term. So at the 2010 to 2015, it appears that it was not possible to manage in a maintenance or a refurbishment because the poor quality of the materials was not allowing it. So the community decided to go through a new church and decide to build a new church. And that was also in the aim of the Catholic Church of Italy, who promote national competitions to investigate new models for the future churches in the future, especially in terms of resilience and sustainability. So the very basic first element to understand was the sense of a community. So what did that church mean to that community? It was a place of identity. It was a gathering place. It was a place where all people from this poor neighborhood used to meet and help each other. So the first point was how to connect the building to the neighbor, to the context, how to distinguish the two areas, the liturgical and holy part of the building, and the one who has a very important role in the social life of the neighborhood for the whole different communities. Then we worked with these very simple volumes. As you can see, it's a flat building. So it's we decided for a non-monumental approach, like it was in the history and the memory of the place. And we decided for prefab technology with cross-laminated wood, so that we could speed up the process, because the very important point was the lack of time, because while we were demolishing the church, of course, there was a matter of how to provide the community with an existing, a new existing space. So at the very end, we came with this very simple design based on the square composition, based on two main parts. As you can see, the church on the right and the parish area on the left, connected by inner and courtyard, and the liturgical area based as also to recall the memory of the existing church in the shape of a square. So all the composition was made in this square concept, biaxial, like the existing church, and using the same pattern also to design the main facade of the church, with suggesting the Tau church into the facade. So having a very minimal approach, as I told you, already said, non-monumental, anti-monumental approach, and very linked to the memory of the existing building, so that not to change the approach and the relationship this community created to this space and to this building. So this is the main entrance with the porch, with protecting also. It's a very warm area, so it's shadowing the facade and front facade and side facade, with the only vertical element of the tower bell. So which has been used as a landmark for this. Yeah, can you? Yeah, the main entrance. We worked, of course, with an artist, so we developed all the symbols of the graves and the eyeball to enter their main hall, and this is the axis where you find the second threshold at the very bottom of the church, the Presbyterian area, because we worked mainly with lighting. So the church is a very closed and protected volume, but once you step in, you enter a space of light with a second threshold, which is this glass ending of the presbytery, with the steps as a path drawn on the floor, providing the walk as an exsultet to the main altar, and the reuse of the existing paintings and refurbishing of the previous church in terms of the memory for the community to replace and find again the elements they have been attached for so many years. So this is the assembly space with this important work on the ceiling in order to bring light inside the church, which means also to bring light on the assembly in each family, in each individual entering the church. So the church is a dance of light. The dance is also because you can see those elements, they are moving during the daylight along the wooden wall of the side of the church. This is the facing the holy assembly to the main, from the altar to the main door. This is how we built the ceiling, which is a sort of a big ciborium from the structure to a reflecting element, bringing light on the assembly. And another theme of the refurbishment was also connected to the reuse of the previous benches. You can see on the right, because of course it was a low budget project, and so it was reused the seat and the wood to recreate the new benches. This is the baptistry, where we reuse again the old basins. So we use the old church as a cave in terms of material, in terms of budget, and in terms of memory. And they placed the new baptism bath, where you have this sculpture bringing light into the water, dripping small reflecting light with gold treatment of painting of these tiles to give the symbolism of the light of bringing new life to the baptism area. The shrine chapel, which normally stay closed, with this new artist insertions, which are always dealing with the Christ, our Lord in resurrection, and the opening of the chapel when it's used as a secondary church, but furthermore, where it's used also for meeting the community, for praying, also for staying all night long, for special praying, special events. So as you can see, the benches, they are not in a row, they are ad includendum all around, and also the reading element can be moved in the center, so the word, the book can be put in the main center of the hall. This is about placing the artist work, and they outside, as I told you, there is a filter and a space in between the church and the parish area, which is this closed and very quiet courtyard, very simple. This is under construction, and you can see the building technique as the building goes on. And this is a night effect of the courtyard, which in the bottom right, you can see the inside, because the church is normally used also for its good acoustic, for concerts, music, recitals, especially in the evening time. So the big window, the big glass presents this night effect. This is a dedication ceremony, so all the community of Varignano gathering for the celebration, for the dedication with the Archbishop, and the inside main, let's say, touching moment with the very simple furniture of the altar, the chair, for, as you can see, using local materials, local stones. The very last point is building the garden, which is a very important element of the parish activities, which also provides a space for kids to play, and this was under construction, and this is 1 year after, which is now totally empty because that was the COVID period. So we ended this construction right after, at the very beginning of the COVID period in Italy, but since also the church has a proper ventilation, a mechanical ventilation, it also took care about the safety of the air treatment, air comfort, and inside. So the last point is also a challenge to ourselves as designers and also to the SOAR community, because this is a brief coming from the Don Marcello Brunini, who was the parish of the church, and he always pointed out, living in, especially in the Varignano area, the importance of safety and security, but first of all, the need of friendship in our cities, because that is the only way for people to trust each other and live together. So this is my presentation. I hope I saved some minutes for the discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Massimo. It's incredible how different the three projects are. As amazing. My favorite of yours is the sculpture with the light that looks like a staircase that is going to heaven. It's just very beautiful.
Yeah.
So I will share my screen again for the interactive session. So I know we're really late, but so we have 6 questions on Slido, and it's just interesting to see what the audience thinks. I know a few people already had to leave because of time, but if you are still there, if you're still on Slido, then you can again scan the QR code in the top left corner or join at sli.do.com and put in the hashtag SBD for security by design. So the first question would be, do you think it is possible to increase the security of a place of worship without losing its architectural quality? And 8 people answered yes. 9. I mean, since you're doing this with architects, I mean, I hope architects know a way around it to say, yes, it's possible. 11. 12. I cannot see how many still are there. Gloria, how many are still there?
21.
Okay, so I should wait a little bit longer. Okay, but it doesn't look like anybody else is going to go on Slido of the others. So I will just...
Yeah, 13 participants reply, so I guess it's two-thirds of the audience. So
14, now everybody's rushing.
Yeah.
Okay, the next question would be, are you aware of current advice and guidelines on security by design available or published through European Commission sources? So the question behind this question was actually that when we designed this call for best practice examples, we said that we would like the architects to show or to use, hopefully they use the advice and guidelines by the European Commission. But of course, this is always a reality check as well, whether the guidelines of the European Commission produces actually reach the architects on the ground, or whether there needs to be more awareness raising and so on. So this is why this question is quite interesting, because then we see what are the needs of the architects as well. And as we can see, there is a bit less than half that are aware of this. So we really need to do more activities on what is available, which resources, which advice and guidelines. Okay, 15. Go to the third question. So if you answered yes to the previous question, do you think that such guidelines should become mandatory by law at national and local level? So let's say in a building regulation, you would have to, the same as you have to provide a certain standard for energy efficiency, you would also, for places of worship or for sensitive places, you would have to provide a certain standard for security by design. Or you choose voluntarily whether you provide the security. Okay, this is interesting. I find this very interesting with like 43 saying no. Of course, the freedom is always better, but maybe the security would be more important. I don't know.
Paul just wrote in the chat that not mandatory by law, but there does need to be an element of accreditation or recognition to give the concept a value.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a part of the building permit process of a sensitive place, like a place of worship, if certain criteria for the security were considered or not, or something like this. I mean, this is just food for thoughts, really. So because we are providing feedback to the European Commission, and the Joint Research Center is creating more guidelines at the moment as we speak. So it's really good feedback to know what the industry thinks, so to speak. Okay, the next question is considering threats to places of worship. So not only human-made, but also climate change, tourism, and natural disasters, and then of course war at the moment. How to mitigate the impact on the worshippers. This is a word cloud, so you can just type in words that come to your mind on how you can mitigate the impact of these threats, like how to mitigate the impact on the worshippers. Security funding, time, development, by its natural use, funding. Which leads, of course, to our event on the 8th of December on how to fund security renovations for existing places of worship in Copenhagen. So anybody who wants to come to Denmark, you're very invited to join us. Interfaith partnerships, site-specific, yeah, that's true, of course. Prevention. Okay, we have 10 who replied to this one. I don't see anybody, I don't know, somebody's typing, okay. Oh. Okay, moving to the next question. So do you think that a participatory approach might result in a better understanding and response towards security when inserting religious sites too? Now I have to move this away because I cannot read the question. Yeah, okay, sorry. So do you think that a participatory approach might result in a better understanding and response towards security when inserting religious sites in EU contexts? So we have 7 people saying yes. People saying yes. 11. There's always most of the time better to have a participatory approach to really hear everybody's point of view. And we had quite a few architectural projects submitted that had a lot of different experts involved. Okay. And moving to the next question. Do you think that opening religious sites to other activities such as cultural use, so music, art, theater, readings, and so on, could promote security and acceptance for religious practices in EU contexts? So we have a yes for security, a yes for acceptance, or both, or neither, of course, also possible. Or don't know. Seven people saying both. Somebody saying for the acceptance. We had an interfaith event in Brussels in March where we had different faith leaders sitting on a table and saying that it's necessary to have events that are interfaith actually in their different faith communities to promote the acceptance. But if you have other activities, that means you're inviting people that might not have a faith, and that means you're addressing the whole community in the whole neighborhood. So it's even a larger impact potentially, right? Though for the security, 8%, so it's maybe a risk as well. Okay, I'm moving on to the next question. That was the last one. Okay, sorry. This is when you present with one screen and you don't see what's the next slide on the other screen. So I will stop sharing my screen and stop sharing my screen. And we had planned for Selma Harrington to do some final remarks.
Sure. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much, Veronika, and thank you all for very passionate and informative presentations, which just affirms the general impression that we had in the jury. So I think I personally learned and enjoyed most of the day and learned from everybody really. Maybe just a quick comment also in general. I think in particular all our architect presenters highlight the importance of context and contextual approach, and they each showed mastery really and explained it very well to us. This also shows to me how it is also important to hear the architect explain when you know understanding the whole. The question may be on that for Alejandro, who had a very good presentation on Alcalá Church. Did community get it? Because like very strong explanations and his conviction in beauty, functionality and security as a sort of holistic triad. And the intention to replace the sense of loss that was there in the memory of the place. So the question would be, did the community get it in his opinion? And I'll just move on. He may or may not reply. Victor and Sofia, again, very impressive example to me of architectural and cultural activism that really brought to light this sort of which sometimes looks like an architectural mine. And treasure trove, as they were saying, in finding and preserving and hoping that this will take its next stage and next life. And then also for Massimo, again, you know, a great explanation of this identity of Varignano, the history of migration, the industrial, the sort of the whole context of where the church is, and very pragmatic, elegant approach to provide this multi-purpose use, where you know, you get beautiful little surprises. Veronika highlighted that stream of light, or the work of artists in kind of utilizing very subtly Christian symbols and softening of course the hidden treasure of that courtyard. So all three are in their own way very, very unique and wonderful spaces that I'm kind of now enticed to visit at some stage when I have the opportunity. So thank you all again for wonderful contribution to the project.
Thank you, Selma. And with this, I would like to close the event today with only 22 minutes delay. But I think we all enjoyed it and it was very interesting. Thank you again, also to the architects. We all see you anyway in Brussels in January.
The same here.
It has been a pleasure. Thank you. And
Thank you.
congratulations
See you soon.
for your
See you
project.
soon.
Congratulations to everybody, and we look forward to publication. That would be wonderful to have.
That's very nice. We'll see you in Brussels then. Bye-bye. Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.